Okay, I'm going to explain why this is so important to people in Folkestone. I was banging on about the housing enforcement policy by Folkestone Council and why it's illegal, and I'll explain on why it's so important to tenants. Because if you're living in a property, especially Victorian property, which if you're living in a Victorian property, there's a lot of bad properties in Folkestone. Right, okay, so about that. Right, there's a lot of bad properties in Folkestone, and it doesn't matter how much money you're spending on there. If a property falls into disrepair, I know there's a lot of ones in Folkestone like that. If you complain about it, you have to go to the council. Well, you can go to the landlord, but really you can go to the council and you can ask them to inspect your property. And what your landlord can do is, there's different methods about this, but you've obviously heard of a Section 21, which is an eviction notice, no fault eviction, but you can block a Section 21. Now, if it's retaliatory in terms of that they were going to, instead of repairing your property, they evicted you instead, and there's certain conditions about this, then that's retaliatory eviction. But that alone has to be backed up by a enforcement by the council. And the problem is, you can have all these things. You can have proof of retaliatory eviction, you can have proof of disrepair, you can have proof of all sorts of other things, but unless the council have inspected your property, given you an assessment, and issued enforcement, and a hazard awareness notice is not an enforcement, the Section 21 will go ahead, and you can't block it. Now, there are certain ways. You'd have to go to court, and there are certain ways to getting around, but it's quite complicated to do. It's not something that most people will be able to do. And so what happens is that for a start, the council takes 6 months to inspect your property, and they'll tell you, or they'll lie to you. I'm going to say lie. I know legally I shouldn't say lie. I couldn't care anymore because I know they lie to you. They lie to you and they'll say, oh, we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the money and all that. What they haven't got is a priority. The council have the money to do this. They have the ability to do this. But what they're trying to do is save money, probably because of Prince's Parade, wasting money on that. And what they'll do is they'll wait 6 months to do the inspection, drag that out. Now, most people are going to get evicted in that time. They're not going to get a enforcement. They're not going to even get the inspection. So they're going to get evicted. Now, unless you go to court, unless you can defend yourself, you get a solicitor who can defend you, you're going to get evicted on there. So if you manage to go to court and get through the first hearing, then maybe you get an inspection. But the problem is you have what's called a Category 1 and Category 2, and Category 1 is really serious issues, which are like serious damp, serious mould. If it's had a bit of a patch of mould on your building, it's not really a massive issue. They're just like one patch. That's probably a Category 2. But if you had multiple Category 1s, which many of these properties do, they have to issue, mandatory, they have to do enforcement. And a hazard awareness notice is not appropriate. There are certain conditions where a hazard awareness notice is okay, is if a property wasn't, there were no tenants in the property at the time, or if the landlord had already started work on it and you had an agreement or something, they'd already made efforts to do it. But if they'd done no work at all on it, and you're still living in that property, they have to issue enforcement. Now, another way they'll try to get around it is they'll downgrade the Category 1s to Category 2s. And then they may say, oh, chuck in a couple of Category 1s to look like we're doing something. And they'll say, but you're not old enough, you're not a vulnerable group, you're not over 65 and you're not under 5, so therefore you're not affected by it. That's not true at all. It's actually illegal to do that. In the HHSRS guidelines, it's irrelevant of whether you are in a vulnerable group, it's whether somebody could be, which basically anybody, you could move out and somebody who's 65 or under 5 is, and therefore basically they have to do it. So it's irrelevant about the tenant who's living in there, which is what they did to me. So they have to issue a housing enforcement notice, improvement notice, or whatever relevant enforcement on there. And the problem with that is it doesn't block the Section 21. And so what's happening is all landlords and letting agencies are renting out substandard properties. People are intimidated to complain about their property, and if they do, they get evicted. Completely illegal. And so what happened is all the councillors, almost every single councillor, has ignored my emails and messages. I've had all my emails blocked by the CEO, Susan Priest. I've in their cabinet report, which basically introduces the housing enforcement policy in 2021, they said that enforcement was a last resort in the cabinet report, not in the actual policy, but in the cabinet report. If you look at that, which is illegal, and they've sent me legal threats. Ewan Green, the monitoring officer who should be looking at this, it seems to me that someone wrote the email for him and signed it for him. There's ways I know about that, which I don't believe he sent it. Same with David Blaskovich, I think that's how you spell his name. I got legal letters from there threatening me that I can't mention councillors. Yes, I can't mention officers. Yes, you can, especially those in leadership roles. I haven't mentioned anybody who are frontline in terms of just general staff. Only people like Kerry Pets, which I'm going to mention. They twist my complaints. They close my complaints down. They lied to me. They claim that because said that they breached the law, that's harassment. It's ridiculous. I've submitted a judicial review now as well, and then they tried to get external solicitors and send me this total garbage letter from the solicitor. It was a total joke, and nothing on it at all had showed that I'd done anything wrong at all. They tried to cherry pick pieces out of it, and it was total garbage. Someone from the council had obviously written it and asked the solicitors to rewrite it and send it. It was embarrassing from the solicitors who are so big. It's an embarrassment what they've sent, and I'm going to be following up with that as well. But why it's so important is if you're a tenant, you're vulnerable, because if your landlord or letting agency evicts you or gives you a Section 21, there's nothing you can do about it. And the enforcement in Folkestone is at 25% of the national average. Now that's bad enough, but you'll find actually that enforcement has been twisted as well, because what I've been reliably told is that was done on a block of apartments. Enforcement was given to one block of apartments in mass, which boosts the numbers up. So there's a big cover-up going on in the council, which is why MP Tony Vaughan should be challenging the council on this, and he's not. He's too chicken to do that. And the councillors, your councillors, should be challenging the council on this, and they're not. And they've been told by Susan Priest, which is illegal, to not contact me. So there's something seriously illegal going on in this council, and I will say it, and I will get legal threats and all this. I don't care, because I know that I'm in the right, and I know this is in the public interest. So you need to contact your councillor, contact the council, make complaints, contact the press, and make them know this, because this is totally illegal what they're doing and needs to be called out.